Welcome to Can't Recommend Enough. Today's guest is Julie Laurin. And Julie got a microscope and started looking around on her back balcony. And what she found just blew open this whole unseen world to her. And in those findings, open an even bigger world to the possibilities. So she's going to be talking about that. And also we're going to get into some other topics like when you find something you love, just doing it, no holding back, go headlong. And also filmmaking. So I hope you guys have a blast because I had a great time with this episode. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Do you have any kind of scientific background at all?
No, I don't. I'm actually a university dropout.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I dropped out 7 times. I tried. And I had different majors from psychology to history to biology and visual arts. And I gave up. I got a job in the software industry. And I bought a microscope after reading a book called Never Home Alone. It's a great book. I recommend it to everybody.
Who wrote that?
Rob Dunn. He's a scientist in the U.S. And he talks about the microscopic life that lives in your apartment, in your home. And
Really?
I was like, oh, man. Yeah, exactly, right? I was like, oh, I wonder what lives around here. So I bought a microscope. And you know what? Microscopes are super cheap these days.
What kind of microscope is it?
The first one I got was an OMAX, O-M-A-X, and it was a binocular scope.
Uh-huh.
Now I have an AM scope. It's a different brand, and it's a trinocular. And, it's just depends on the amount of money you want to spend, but you can get a really cheap one. You can get a pocket microscope for $20. So there's no excuse anymore. You can actually see the microscopic world at a very reasonable price now.
So is the difference between binocular and trinopic, is that like where you turn the actual scope on the bottom to get different lumens? How does that work?
Yeah, so binocular. So it's kind of like a pair of binoculars. It just means there's 2 eyepieces. Trinocular means there's a third one, and in the third one you can put in like a DSLR camera.
Oh.
So it means it's got 2 eyepieces, and then you have a third one where you can put in a separate camera.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking like the old microscopes like we had in school, which were like single eyepieces, and you're just kind of looking in with one eye closed. All right. So what led you to read this book? Did somebody recommend it to you, or were you just you saw it on the shelf and you're like, wow, that looks interesting? What's the process there?
Yeah, so I read a lot of books. I mean, I have a pretty good collection of books between like fiction, the classics, and then I have like a nonfiction bookshelf where I read stuff. Like I have a really particular interest in like the history of medicine for some reason. Mm-hmm. And this, was something that I saw, I think like at a bookstore, and I was like, well, it's kind of related to medicine. It's, it's about the microscopic world, and I don't know a lot about the microscopic world. So I was like, yeah, why not? And that's what led me to pick it up.
Was it a page turner?
Yeah, it really was. You start to learn about kind of the beneficial microbes that live in your house. And you start to learn about the stuff that that you wouldn't really think about on a daily basis. And I have to admit, for a while, like everybody, I was scared of spiders. I was scared of little bugs that live in the corners, of your bedroom, And then you read this book and you have a different appreciation for that kind of life that surrounds you.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
So you read the book and you're getting excited and you're like, all right, I got to get a microscope now and I got to check out what's in my own backyard, right? So you go and get the microscope and then what did you do? What was the first thing that you did?
So what's interesting is that I think I only got on chapter 2, and that's when I went to Amazon and I bought the microscope. So it was definitely an impulse buy. But yeah, so the first thing I did, what was interesting is that I'm originally from Northern Ontario. So right now I live in Ottawa, which is the capital of Canada. But I'm from the north, a very remote kind of country life. And I went up north while I waited chilly, yeah, especially in the winter. But it's nice because it's like fishing, camping, that kind of rural life. And so I went fishing, and by the time I got back to Ottawa, I had my microscope in the mail. The first thing I looked at were fish scales. Now, fish scales under the microscope, they look like huge seashells. It's really beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, and what was the zoom on that? Like, is it times, what are the different views that you get on there? Like how zoomed in were you, or how close? What's the magnification, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. So you get like, usually like you get a set that has like 4x, 10x, 25x, and 100x.
Uh-huh.
For most microscopic life, including tardigrades and rotifers and stuff like that, mites and stuff, you only really need 4x, which is like with an eyepiece, it's about 40 times what the naked eye can see.
Really?
Mhm.
That's awesome. So first thing you see is the fish scale. What's next? So you're excited about that, right? You're like, okay, I really
Yeah.
got into this. Now, did you see any life on the scale?
No.
Okay.
No, this was a fish that I caught, and my dad took off the scales for me, and because we eat the fish that we catch, and so I brought some scales back. There was no life on it, but the next thing I looked at, I think, was pond water. I think I went to like a local pond, got some pond water, and I looked at that, and that was like. I don't know if you've ever experienced virtual reality games, like you're kind of immersed in like VR. It's kind of like real life VR, where all of a sudden you have like this universe. You have like all these little things that are squiggling along, and you have like algae that's like golden, the color of like a golden apple. And then you have like this beautiful lime green stuff. It's mind blowing, all the stuff that exists in a drop of water.
Did you know what you were seeing beforehand, or did you go back to it and be like, okay, I got to figure out exactly what I'm looking at here?
Yeah, that's a great question, because the book by Rob Dunn is a book that's very specific to the kind of microscopic life that lives all around you. In order to identify what I was seeing outside, like in pond water or in moss, like when I first saw my first tardigrade, for example, I had to go to
And for
Twitter.
everybody listening, what is a tardigrade? Is that the little water bear?
Yes. So the tardigrade is the very popular water bear or moss piglet. It's a creature, it's a micro animal. It's a creature that can survive. It's called an extremophile. So
Okay.
it's a creature that can survive like extreme heat, extreme cold, space radiation, elevation changes, things like that. They're really mind blowing. And I actually found hundreds of them on my balcony.
Really?
Yeah.
And what surfaces were they in or on?
Great question. So tardigrades, what's interesting about tardigrades is they're usually found in moss or tree lichen, but in this specific case, they were found in concrete. So it was interesting how I found them. I was looking at snow under the microscope, right? I mean, who doesn't want to look at snowflakes under the microscope? They're beautiful.
Yeah.
And as the snow was melting, I saw this little shape and I was like, oh my God, I think that's a tardigrade. So I got more snow, and sure enough, I found another tardigrade. And then in the springtime, I started looking at some of the water that would collect, like sometimes the balconies don't drain properly. And I just took some water from the balcony and looked at it under the microscope, and I had hundreds of them. So they live in the little recesses of the concrete. And I suspect it's because there's nearby trees. So they probably cling on the leaves of trees that land on my balcony, and that's how they got populated.
Okay. What do you know anything about how they survive, like what their sustenance is? Is it
So the reason they actually survive is because they have this way of essentially rolling into a ball, stopping their metabolism. It's a process that's scientifically known as cryptobiosis. And so that's how they kind of, the best way to describe it is kind of like going into a coma, or, it's like if your body just stopped all of a sudden and shrunk to like a tenth of its size, and then they become as small as a speck of dust.
what?
And that's when they become practically invincible. It's really mind blowing.
That's crazy. So, do you know anything about the tardigrades? Like, do you know how long they live for, and if they live for a long time, like what's the oldest one
Yeah.
that we've seen?
It's interesting because tardigrades, it's hard to estimate their lifespan because they can go into cryptobiosis several times during their life. So essentially they could like quote unquote go to sleep for 10 years and then be woken up because they need water, right? So frequently a tardigrade will go into cryptobiosis because, for example, they don't have water in their surroundings. So they shrivel up and they go into this this form of like no metabolism for a while, and then they get reintroduced to water, and then they come back to life.
They're just
So,
like, yes.
yeah,
I'm
exactly.
back.
I've actually filmed that process. It's really wild to see them come
Really?
back to life. Oh, yeah, it's awesome.
That's rad. So they just can sit indefinitely, I guess, at least 10 years. And then,
oh, if not more.
Yeah. And then just come back to life and it's business as usual.
Yeah.
That's really neat. So have you kept any of the samples at all to like kind of study them over time?
Oh, yeah. I have about 25 Petri dishes of tardigrades right now on my desk that are, we call them desiccated, which means that they're dried up.
Mm-hmm.
But I always, go collect them on my balcony because there's so many of them. So it's really not hard for me to get a sample of tardigrades.
That's pretty cool. Now you got me really wanting to check it out.
You should.
See everything
Absolutely.
that's out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, besides tardigrades, what else have you seen in there? Like let me ask you this. What's the most mind-blowing thing that you've seen? Because obviously you've seen a lot. You're seeing into a whole new world that we're not privy to every day. What's the coolest thing? I know tardigrades is pretty cool, so that's kind of hard to top, but...
Yeah, it's hard because like on my balcony, for example, there's all sorts of extremophiles. Like, so tardigrades are not the only kind of super invincible ones. There's rotifers too. So those
rotifers?
Guys, it's hard to describe them, man, without showing you a picture, but they kind of look like worms. They're not worms. And then all of a sudden they pop out these two spherical objects that spin around and they create a vortex in the water. And that's how they capture prey. It's really wild. You got to just see it to believe it. But other than that, I think my favorite, it's hard because I have many favorites, but one of the things I love observing are amoebas. The traditional shapeshifters, you see them and they just change shape like, every 5 seconds or so. It's really wild. Yeah.
And what kind of shapes do they change into?
Whatever. I mean, there's no like specific shapes. It's not like they go from, rectangle to circle. They literally kind of like slither around and that's how they move. It's like they change shape and you can just watch them. They're really, really slow too. It's kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. I think everybody should just Google amoeba and watch some YouTube videos on it.
Have you seen any battles?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've seen tardigrades get eaten by cyclops. Cyclops that's a common name for them, but they're actually called copepods. They're a crustacean kind of creature, and I've seen, unfortunately, a tardigrade get eaten by one. We did that on Twitch, actually. It was quite
really?
Quite amazing. Yeah, it happened live.
So you're streaming on Twitch, this whole thing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. So are people... Because Twitch is being the system that it is, people are commenting in real time, and are they just blown away by what they're seeing? Like, whoa, like, man, that thing's getting eaten.
Yeah, I mean, it was wild because I started on Twitch. So the long story is that I posted a video of tardigrades on Imager. That went viral. It hit like 200,000 hits in one night. That went viral. It went to Boing Boing and all that stuff. Anyway, somebody said you should
What's
get on
Boing
Twitch.
Boing?
Boing Boing is like one of the big viral kind of pop news kind of pop culture websites. So if you get published on Boing Boing, like everybody gets a hold of that. Like Google News publishes it. So yeah, it went super viral, and I had like 1,000 Twitch followers overnight, which is madness.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I started like streaming tardigrades, and I started doing a bunch of press around the world. And it's just, for me, it's like, it's just cool, man. It's just cool to share this with everybody. Sometimes it's kids. Sometimes it's like, 80-year-olds watching the stream. It's really cool. You never know who's watching.
Now, has people obviously reach out to you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Are people asking for kind of ways to get set up, how they should do things and everything, and you gotta So like, hey, this is, I read this book. It's pretty easy, just get the microscope, get into it and just start doing it. But, we all get that like paralysis, like, oh, I got to get it perfect before I do it. Do you run into that? Like people
All
need
the
you to be
time.
super specific about it?
Yeah. Yeah, all the time. Even tonight, like I did a Twitch stream tonight and somebody was like, hey, what kind of microscope? What's your setup? And I always tell them, and I even pop up a web browser during the stream and I show them, okay, this is the kind of microscope you can get for this budget. I find it much more important to share knowledge with people, like to just kind of encourage them to just go for it, just do it. And I mean, like I'm using my phone to do the streaming. It's not complicated and it's not expensive. That's the most important thing is that you can even, there's even a microscope called the Fold Scope. It's actually made out of paper and you can buy it online. I think it's like $10.
Okay.
So it's very accessible.
How are you using your phone though? What's your setup?
So the phone is set up through a microscope attachment. And so that connects the phone like physically to the microscope. And then I use an app called Droid Cam and that converts the phone into a webcam.
Ah, okay. Cool. Sounds difficult, but it's probably not at all.
No, not at all. It's super easy. Super easy.
Very neat. So it must be just so much fun, doing this and having all these people just so amazed and wowed by what's going on. So what's next though? What's the place that you want to check out and see what's at the microscopic level? Are there any kind of a wish list of, I got to check these spots out? What do you got?
Yeah, there's two things I want to do. The first thing is I want to find a hydra. So a hydra is exactly what you think it is. It's a creature with multiple kind of heads that you cut one off, the other one grows back. It's like virtually indestructible. I haven't found one yet. That's something that I'm actively looking for.
Where might you find it?
Usually a stream. And it's kind of like I haven't really looked in streams. I've mostly looked in lakes and ponds. The other thing I want to do is I want to go out to the east coast of Canada or anywhere where there's an ocean because marine life is very different from freshwater life. So I really want to look at the marine specimens.
That would be very cool.
Yeah.
Nice. And you said you have a lot of lakes by you too, right?
Yes.
Okay. Are any of the lakes, are there any like... So obviously you got rivers coming into the lakes from the ocean, but then you have the Great Lakes feeding into. Do the Great Lakes feed into any of your lakes at all?
No,
little
not
rivers
here.
or anything? Okay.
No.
Too far north?
Too far northeast, I guess.
Northeast. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm trying to get a grip on my geography. I'm in Michigan, so I'm not like that far away. But
exactly.
I'm still coming to terms.
That's okay.
What about, have you looked at any, besides outside, any like household items or food or anything?
Oh, yeah. I've even looked at my own blood.
Oh, yeah? What'd you say?
That's pretty wild. You see everything. You see the red blood cells. You see like, the size of them. You see like, it's amazing because you can even swab the inside of your cheek. And then you use a blue dye called methylene blue that you can get at your local pharmacy. And you just add that and it kind of colors all the cells and you can see like the mitochondria and the nucleus and all this cool stuff that I totally forgot about in high school biology, but you learn stuff eventually.
I think that you retain what's interesting to you at the time.
Yeah.
So you probably weren't interested back then, but now since you're interested, it's like, oh, I remember hearing about that, but I didn't care so much about it at the time, but now I can keep it all in there and I know exactly what they're talking about. Like, exactly. Man, I wish I could go back.
Exactly.
So what about, have you done it when you were sick and your body is fighting off an infection to kind of see?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And how did that look?
Well, it's interesting because the kind of microscopes that you get at home, so the compound scopes or the stereoscopes, you can't see virus with that. You can't because the viruses are too small. You can see bacteria. But to see a virus, you need an electron microscope, and those are like $200,000. They're in your local
that's easy.
colleges.
No big deal.
Yeah, exactly, right? So I didn't see anything wild, because I had a throat infection, so I swabbed my throat, hoping to maybe see some bacteria. But the other thing I learned is that you have to culture bacteria. You can't just swab it and look at it. You have to actually give it a medium to grow.
Okay.
So, and that's a whole other technique that I haven't gotten into.
So are you trying to build like some kind of enclosed area with like climate control for humidity and stuff like that to get that to happen?
Nah.
Okay. Not
No,
yet?
I'm not as interested in growing bacteria. There are people on Twitter and YouTube who actually do that. They actually
Uh-huh.
make art with bacteria because you can actually culture it to grow a certain way, which makes pictures. It's really wild. You'll have to Google it later, but
Yeah, that's interesting.
it's not something I'm personally interested in. I'm much more interested in other creatures that aren't human.
Okay. Does the bacteria pose a risk at all when you're culturing it?
Oh, for sure, because you can like get staph and like all E.
Yeah, that's
coli and
what I
all
think.
that stuff. So it's not something I would want to do in my house.
Yeah, doesn't sound that safe.
No.
All right. So you're on Twitch, streaming on there, and probably all the other social media sites, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And where else? I know Reddit. You post on Reddit as well.
Yeah, I
Okay.
do. Reddit is interesting because that's more like a personal account. It's like I
Mhm.
check out the news and stuff on Reddit. Yeah.
Okay. And okay, from all this, what's like the coolest result besides seeing all the neat stuff that you're seeing, but just from having it out there, like the coolest thing that happened because you're just putting all this information out there and showing people how rad looking at things through a microscope is. Like, what's the coolest experience from it that's happened to you or come about because of it?
Oh man, that's a loaded question because there's been
It's
so
totally
many
loaded.
things, man. Yeah, I know, right? I mean, there have been so many things to celebrate. Like I did a lot of press, which is something I used to do as a fine art photographer when I lived in Montreal. But this is so different because now you're talking about science. You're not
Mhm.
talking about the arts anymore. You're not talking about like the emotions that went into a piece of work. You're talking about
Do
like
you feel
tardigrades and
kind
stuff.
of out of your element a little bit? Like a little unsure, be like, I know what I'm talking about, but are people gonna see me as an authority? Um,
Yeah, there's
because
the
you are
imposter
newer to it?
syndrome.
Yes.
But yeah,
Yeah.
there's the imposter syndrome that you have to deal with. But the other cool thing that's come out of it, that was the second part of my answer, I guess, which is that I have connected with all sorts of scientists. I now count some scientists, especially in the US and Europe, as some of my friends now, because I mean, I started this in November last year, and now I've connected with over 2,000 scientists. It's been amazing. I've interviewed them on my website, on Twitch, and now I'm starting a podcast, which is, part science. So
What's your podcast called?
having it's called Planet B612. It's a nod to asteroid B612, which was the home of the Little Prince.
Oh, okay. Very
Yeah.
cool. Nice. All right. So continue about the scientists.
Yeah, so the scientists give you some cred, right? I mean,
Mhm.
if they're recommending you to everybody, it's because they know that you've done your research and that the cool thing about science is that you can be wrong, you know? And the cool thing about not being a scientist is that I can actually say, I don't know, man. I'm not a scientist. So
You got a safety net, both
I got a
theory
safety
and
net.
not being a scientist.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's actually really cool. So all these scientists, that's really cool that you have some cred out there with them. They love what you're doing and everything. What about kids? Have you sat down with any kids to show them besides like streaming, like in person looking through there? Because I know kids are probably just so blown away by this.
Yeah, it's funny because one of the things I wanted to do before COVID hit was I was going to rent a community center. You know, it's like $10 a day. It's really cheap for a nonprofit,
Hmm.
and invite kids to come and watch through a microscope attached to a projector or something. You know, I really wanted to show them tardigrades, but then COVID hit. So what's interesting through Twitch is that I keep my Twitch stream kid friendly. You know,
Hmm.
like in real life, I'll drop F bombs all the time. But on Twitch, I keep it friendly because I learned, like, I started getting messages from parents. They were like, school's out because of the pandemic. My kid watches you all the time and they're learning their science. I was like, oh man, that's awesome. That's
That
the best.
is. That is
Yeah,
so
it's really
cool.
great.
So now that you're doing this, and this begs the question, like you said, your career is totally different from what you're doing here as something that you're doing as a hobby and fun. But does it make you want to do this more as a career, or as something that you see that it's a passion of yours, and if you got paid well for it, that you would like to continue doing it just for the fun of it, and making some money is pretty good too?
Yeah, it's been interesting because I got affiliated on Twitch within a week of starting. So I started making money through Twitch immediately, and it's not a huge amount, but it's still a monthly amount that pays the bills. Would I do it for a living? Absolutely, in a heartbeat, right? I mean, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't want to do this for a living? It's something that you can, you don't work for a boss. You set your own agenda. You learn from other people. It's really fun. And I think it's something that, as you grow older, I'm in my 40s, right? So as you grow older, you realize like, okay, well, I might not have my job tomorrow. The jobs are not, it's not our parents' generation anymore.
Yeah.
We don't have job security. So it's always nice. I always recommend that people have a little side income on the side. Have a little gig. Try something new. Try something you've always wanted to do, because you never know. Maybe one day you'll be able to do it, for a living. So would I do it for a living? 100% I would.
That's the way to go. I mean, but I like what you say there too. You got to try it. You got to do something on the side that you really love to do. And if something happens from it, that's awesome. You were doing it because you love doing it. And then, hey, if it takes you that much farther, amazing. So
totally. And you know what? If it doesn't, then you learn other skills.
Yes.
Like, people have to remember, like, starting a podcast, doing a live stream, whatever, doing social media, you learn all sorts of stuff, from communications to marketing.
Yep.
So don't discount the fact that you're learning stuff. And the other thing is, you know what? If you don't want to do it for money, who cares? Do it for fun. That's first and foremost. You can tell foremost. Yeah, you can tell who's doing it for the cash and who's doing it out of love.
That's
immediately.
Right.
You can see it right away.
That is totally correct, because you just kind of lose the soul in it if it's purely financial,
Yeah, totally.
But I like what you're saying about, with podcasts and everything. I think it's when you find something that you love and you want to get it out there, right? You have to teach yourself a lot of stuff, because obviously you don't want to pay people to do all the things that need to be done. Unless you get somebody that knows how to do all that stuff, you do it yourself. I mean, you got to learn how to be a good speaker. So if you're a terrible speaker, you're going to learn quick. You're going to have to learn how to edit if you don't want to pay somebody. You're going to learn how to have, capture the good audio. And like you said, you're working on your studio there, getting out all the reflections and everything. Marketing is a big thing. And that's what I really like about this medium as well, is that you learn how to do it better and see what works and see what doesn't. You're just testing it. And it's not like it's something that it's live or die. It's just something you're doing for fun. And then you see what works and what makes sense and what people like. And if they don't, they don't. If they do, they do. Awesome. But I think you get better in whatever field you're doing. If you love something and you really like it and you want to put it out there, and you just keep on working at it, and you'll eventually get better. You do something so many times.
There's just two things to say about that. Number one is, if you don't do it for money, especially not right away, but even if you never do it for money, you will always have the creative freedom. There's a famous New York, I think it was a New York Times fashion photographer. I forget his name, but he refused to work for money.
Really?
So he had the creative freedom when he did his photography. It's kind of unknown how he actually lived, but he lived very simply. He literally had a cot, and he ate like hot dogs for lunch every day. Not the most healthiest routine, but the point being that his belief was, if I accept a salary from them, they're going to dictate what content I put out. So that's a very good point to learn, is that, at first, enjoy your creative freedom, because with money comes, more restrictions. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And the other thing is, It's just simply that, again, you're learning transferable skills. Yeah, it's hard, but eventually if you're good at it, you'll start to make some money and you can hire people. And even better, you'll know what it's like and you'll know what to look for in the person you want doing the job.
There you go. That's the exact thing too. You'll know exactly, because you have your own way of doing things. And then when you want to outsource those small tasks because you don't have time because things are rolling, then you say, hey, I know exactly what I want and this is what needs to be done. And make it
exactly
the way that works for you. Yeah. It's just fun. And I think there's just so many things out there to be passionate about it and to get into. And I think, we were talking about a little bit before about paralysis, like even people who are talking to you and they want to know exactly, hey, tell me exactly what I should get. And you're like, well, here's a couple different options. Just do it. That's the main thing. And I think that's the same thing with everything, is just do it. You're probably going to suck at first, but just do it. Sure. Nobody knows what they're doing at first. You know?
Yeah, it's interesting because in 2018 I lost the ability to walk for 6 months.
What happened?
And it was we don't know. It was they checked for multiple sclerosis. They didn't find it, and they said, you know what, we can either do a like a spinal tap to find out, or you can just leave it for now and see how things go. And I just decided, you know what, I don't need the spinal tap. I'm walking again. I'm running. Started boxing. Started BMX riding. But the point being, at that point, that was a catalyst in my life. That was like, okay, you know what? Now's the time to do all the stuff I've wanted to do. No more excuses, no more paralysis, no more imposter syndrome. If somebody doesn't like your work, if somebody doesn't think you have the cred, who cares? Do it.
That's right.
Do it anyway. And it gave me so much motivation. It's been 2 years, man. I've been on a roll like crazy, just doing everything I wanted to do.
Okay, so 2 years. What were the things that you wanted to do? What have you done?
What have I done? So the first thing I did is I hired a running coach. I've always wanted to start jogging. So I hired a running coach. I started barefoot running, which is wild.
I gotta mention.
It's awesome.
Did you start with those toe shoes at first?
No.
You just went straight in?
Completely barefoot. In fact, I even ran in just a pair of socks in the wintertime.
Okay.
So I started doing that. And then I joined a boxing club.
Are you on pavement? Or are you out on like rocky terrain?
No, you don't want to run on rocks or anything, right? So you're better off running on grass.
Okay.
Or in the wintertime is the best time because you can get waterproof socks and you can just run in the snow. It's like running on pillows,
All
so
right.
it's kind of fun. And then I started boxing. So I trained with a coach with a competitive boxing club. And what else have I done? I started live streaming. I'm working on my podcast. I bought a BMX bike. I bought an SC Bikes BMX bike with fat tires.
Ooh.
It's wild. It's a sexy bike.
Have you taken it in any pools or anything? Any drained pools? Done any tricks?
No. I've actually, but I crashed it hard last year. I was like skipping puddles. With it, just like kind of fooling around in the rain, and I hit a patch of mud, and I ended up going to the ER by ambulance. I had a huge black eye. It was wild. I was like, oh man, I feel like a teenager again, but this is the feeling I'm chasing,
Besides the eye, what did you bust up?
I didn't bust up anything, thankfully. I busted up my eye. They x-rayed my shoulder and my collarbone, and thankfully it was still intact. So I just had a massive concussion. Couldn't box for like a month or two. So yeah, it was brutal.
Yeah, at least it was worth it. Concussions suck, but at least you didn't break anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm much more prudent now on my bike. But
I'm with you on that. I mean, I was longboarding a little over a week ago, and I went over this crack that was just big enough in the pavement for the wheel to just get stuck in it. And I ride goofy, so that's right foot forward. And I went and I tucked and rolled, but I did it on my right arm, which is my dominant arm, and busted myself up good. And I didn't think it was that bad. Like when I got out of there, I was like, it'll be fine. But I'm still feeling it. And now I can actually move my arm. It was kind of stuck like C3PO, like in a kind of L shape for a bit at the joint. But yeah, it's getting better, but I still feel it. I'm like, do I ride again? I don't want to, just because I ride, if I rode like regular, I'd be falling on my left arm and feel a lot better. But since my right arm is in the front, I'm like, my right arm is the arm I do and I realize how much I need my right arm. So, but I was thankful that nothing was broken. And that's what I was kind of getting at, was nothing was broken. And for that, I'm thankful. At least I don't think. But yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I don't know. How old are you, Rick?
I'm 39.
39. Okay, so you're almost, I'm 43. So yeah, you start to feel, as much as I encourage people to just go ahead and do all the things, when you're in your 40s or near your 40s, you start to feel all the aches and pains, man. So you got to take it easy.
That's what I hear. And I refuse to believe it. But after that, I was like, if I was a younger man, would I be healing faster? And I'm like, maybe I shouldn't tempt the fate. I don't know.
No, exactly.
But it's fun. I mean, to do all that kind of stuff. And I mean, you're only as old as you feel. So it really doesn't even matter. But
oh, totally.
What else? You got a BMX, and then you got 2 years of stuff here. What else is on the list?
Oh yeah, I mean that's a lot. I mean, I got a BMX bike, started boxing,
live streaming,
running,
boxing, barefoot running,
live streaming, podcasting.
Has the podcast dropped yet?
Yeah, that's pretty much. No, it's dropping September 15th.
Okay. Oh, you got a date locked in.
Oh yeah. I mean, I have all the marketing assets are done.
Okay.
I've got all the show notes. I'm just wrapping out the show notes. I've been pre-recording for about a month and a half now.
Okay.
So we're pre-recording in advance.
Okay. How many episodes do you have right now before you drop?
Before I drop, I'm probably going to have about 2 or 3 in the can plus 8. So I'm going to drop 4 at a time on the release date. And then I'm going to drop, it's going to be twice weekly.
Very cool. So you're going to have a lot of content. For people. Nice. So,
I actually, my plan was to go 3 times a week, but it was too expensive.
Yeah. What service are you using?
Yeah.
If you don't
I'm using Squadcast.
Squadcast, okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, I'm very open about it. I love Squadcast.
I've heard good things about them. Like okay. I hear, especially like for this type of thing where it's over the internet, it's like great to do those kind of recordings. So I've been looking into it.
Yeah, nice. you get proper wave files and stuff. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, that I like. We're using Zoom right now, but I feel that there's dropouts and stuff every once in a while. So sometimes it's a little sketchy, but it gets the job done. So I don't know.
Yes, it does. I can't complain about Zoom. Zoom is a great quality too.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, hey, it's saved my butt many a times. I used to, because we were doing like local stuff. So it was really great to go to people with my local podcast. But on this, it's more like, I just want to talk to everybody like all over. I think COVID kind of makes it harder to do the local thing, and it's great. It's greater to have that bigger net. So I love that people are all about stuff that I have no idea about. And I want to find new crazy stuff. And I want other people to find new, just amazing things that they'll be like, oh, that's pretty neat. So this, I think, people listening to it are just going to be like so blown away because it's something that you can do. You can get into really easily. Like you said, you just go on Amazon or go to a store that sells microscopes, buy a microscope, hit your backyard, hit your front yard, hit your house, and you got something and you're ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that simple. And when it comes to because they might not know what they're looking at. So what I always recommend is just go on Twitter. All the scientists are on Twitter and they're like eager to help people who don't know what they're looking at. So
do you take a picture of it and you post it on there, or do you say, hey, I'm looking at this thing and try to describe it?
No, no. I always post a picture or a video. They love
Okay.
video because then you can see how the creature's interacting, and like what size they are.
Okay.
So they're really cool. Science Twitter is just, it's an amazing community. It's very easy. Scientists get the bad rap for being like elite and all that stuff. But in the end, they're really, really human and very nice. And they'll totally help you identify stuff.
All right. What have you learned from them? Like, have they told you anything that kind of blew your mind, like taking it that much farther and you're like, whoa.
All the time. I mean, I've even had just random phone calls. I had a phone call recently so there's one thing in water that I think everybody needs to know about. It's called a diatom, diatom, and essentially they're made of glass. And they are the bottom of the food chain. It's what every creature eats before it gets up to us, okay? And what's cool about diatoms is that they provide us with about half the air that we breathe. So
Really?
that's mind-blowing because most of us think our air comes from trees, and it does to a certain extent, but diatoms actually provide us with just as much, if not more, breathable oxygen. And so I had a phone call with the person who's in charge of like the International Diatom Society or whatever. And we just had like a 1 hour call, and she's in Germany. And it was like, I could ask her whatever questions I wanted to. She was so open to like helping me identify and even promote the education of diatoms. If you ever Google that, they kind of look like snowflakes under the water. They're really beautiful.
So what does the diatom get out of life if it's like pretty much the lowest in the food chain?
Yeah, right.
It does so much for everything else.
I don't know.
What does it get? What is its reward?
I have no idea. I guess the imagination, honestly, the imagination of humans, because there's been a lot of art that's been made based on diatoms. So even like early days, like 1700s, people were like looking at diatoms and like drawing them. There's really old ancient drawings of diatoms that you can find. So I would say, they don't get a whole lot out of life, but they are very, very pretty.
All right. So that I guess it makes it all the more better for them. They being the lowest in the food chain, they do so much work for everything else. They get to have some beauty to them, and we can revere them. So that's good.
Yeah, I actually very strongly recommend people Google that because the images are just stunning.
I am going to, and I'm actually gonna put in the show notes. I'm gonna put a kind of everything that we talked about here, all the different things that you saw in there, so people have them. And I'll go online to get the correct spellings and stuff, just so people were like, well, if they want to reference back, what am I going to look up? And then also, I'll put your information as well. Before we get to that, before I get to all the stuff, I have a big question for you. Besides what we talked about, what do you recommend? Like, what is something that you're just loving right now? This is a show about recommending to people. So something that you'd want to say, like, whether it's another book that you read or some kind of movie that you saw or a philosophy, something like what's got you going right now?
Oh my God. You know why that's a tough question? Because I'm into all sorts of things, from video games to films to television series. But I'm gonna tell you one that's really weird. Probably the weirdest. I'm crossing my fingers. It's going to be the weirdest one that you've ever heard.
So bring it on. Bring it on.
So the other day, my partner brings a French cheese home.
Okay.
And it's a cheese called Mimolette. Mimolette.
Mimolette. Okay.
Okay. Mimolette.
Is it pungent?
What's curious about this cheese? No, it's actually delicious. So what's curious about it, though, let me tell you, it's made by cheese mites. So the French, they invented this cheese in order to compete with the Dutch cheese back in like the Louis XIV kind of days. And so the cheese makers inserted mites into the cheese to give it its flavor.
How do they do that?
So if you eat this cheese, I have no idea. It's one of the things. I want to go to France to find out how they make it because, dude, it is the best tasting cheese you'll ever have. And the best way I can describe it is, the Cheetos dust? You know the yummy Cheetos dust that you eat, that orange stuff?
AKA
It tastes
crack?
like that, but in a cheese. Yes, yes. So it tastes like Cheetos dust, but in a cheese.
That's
and
nuts.
the coolest thing is that I got to see the mites under the microscope, which is freaking awesome.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Now,
so it had like a bonus of like.
What are you pairing it with?
Oh,
all right.
What did we have it with? We had like
if you paired it with Cheetos, would it cancel out?
Like I'm tasting nothing it would right give now. It like a crunchy.
Yeah.
No, it would be crunchy. I think we paired it with like some like prosciutto.
Oh, God, that sounds good. I gotta get some. Where did you find it though? You have to go to like a specialty cheese shop?
And a little Italian. Yeah, it was like a little Italian like specialty shop. I heard though that Mimolette was banned in the United States for a while, so you might want to look around.
Do you know
it had too many mites.
Oh, bummer. We need to stop being such
But I
wusses.
think you can find it today though.
Okay. It's like
yeah, we're pretty hardcore in Canada.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yes.
It's because especially in the Great White North, you can survive like extreme colds and stuff. So we're a little more fragile down here.
Yeah, we're a very hardcore kind of population.
Yeah. All right. So Mimolette, you said, right?
Yes.
Okay. How do you spell it?
Mimolette.
Okay. Mimolette. All right. So I got to track that down and I got to get some prosciutto because I'm a cheese head. Like I love cheese and I always want to try every kind of cheese that I can try. Whatever comes by, if there's like a cheese platter, I'm on it. So I want something.
You got to
like
try this, and then I want to hear back from you after you've tried it.
You want to hear a funny experience? Cool. So when I was younger, I was at my grandma's house, and she gave me port wine for the first time. And to me, it looked like Play-Doh because it was like rainbow colored and everything. I was like, "What is this, Play-Doh? What are you giving me?" And I didn't want to eat it at first. And she's like, just try it. She puts it on some crackers. I ate it. I was like, oh, this is amazing. So I think from that point forward, I was like, okay, I got to try all different types of cheeses, no matter what, just to see what I'm getting into. Because something like that, I mean, I was a kid and I just instantly shot it down, even though it looked awesome. But it was just so good.
Are you Portuguese?
No, my dad is from Peru. My mom is a European mutt. So we got like all types of cultures and stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, there's like Polish and English in there too. So we have a very interesting cuisine growing up, which is nice.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. So my grandma was actually, she was on the Polish side. So we had a lot of Polish food too, which was really good.
Of cabbage.
Yes. And I'm not a fan of cabbage, which is weird. I guess it's just the smell I can't get over. I don't know. Something about it.
Okay.
Or at least fermented. I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, the fermented is not good.
Yeah. It's got a very strong punch to it. I don't know.
I agree.
All right. So how can we find you? Twitch. What's your Twitch handle? Is that what they call them? Handles on Twitch?
Yeah, usernames, whatever, or channels.
Yes, channel.
It's a Tiny World. So it's twitch.tv/A Tiny World.
A Tiny World. Okay. And then where else?
On Twitter, you can find me at twitter.com/A Tiny World ORG because I couldn't get the full handle. Mm-hmm. And you can also
Didn't you just want to fight that person? Like track them down and be like, look, I need this.
It's an inactive account too. It's been inactive.
It always
is.
I
think it's always like that.
And they have like one post.
Yeah, exactly. So, ORG. So if you can't find me with A Tiny World, then look for A Tiny World ORG because the website is atinyworld.org. So that's why.
All right. So I'm going to make a plea right here, right now.
Yes.
All right. So if you are, or the person that has a Twitter account, A Tiny World, I want you to, in good faith, delete that account if you're not using it.
That would be awesome.
my buddy Julie can use what's rightfully a tiny world.
Rick, if you have that kind of power, we're going to be even closer buddies, okay?
I'm going to try to amass it.
Yes, do it.
But you got to use the power of people. You know, you never know.
Oh, yeah.
You put
Absolutely.
it out there into the world, and maybe somebody somewhere knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. They're like, hey, didn't you say that you had a Tiny World Twitter page?
Yes.
And they're like, yeah. Well, you don't use it, right? Well, yeah. There's somebody that needs it. Get rid of it. I'm like, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. I should probably just get rid of it.
That would be great. Or maybe Twitter could actually finally do their sweep. That would be nice too.
No, that's not going to happen. So
no, I know.
we have to rely on the kindness of strangers to make it happen.
Okay. Well, hey, high five for that.
All right. So we got Twitter. We got Twitch covered. Anything else? Oh, and the website.
The website is atinyworld.org, or you can go to planetb612.fm for the podcast.
Okay. And you're going to be so that's the main page for the podcast, but you'll be on all the big names too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I'm going to put all those links in the description so everybody can find you. And you said September 14th?
No, September 15th.
15th. All right.
Yeah.
So you're going to be live September 15th. I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
And you're just going to crush it. It's going to be awesome.
Thank you. I hope so.
I'm excited to listen to the podcast too. Now, are you going to have guests on there that you're talking to?
It's entirely
using the Squadcast. Entirely guest based. Okay.
It's all guest based. I have a variety of guests. This is not just science. So I have from scientists to historians to I have the White Walker from Game of Thrones.
What?
I have the gaffer who.
How did you pull that off?
The Martian. Like I have, because I worked in the film industry. I worked in photography. I worked in the arts circles, and people know each other, and it just you go from there. You use your network first, right? When you have guests. So
yeah,
that's what I did.
So, and you said the gaffer for The Martian?
Yeah. So the gaffer, Julian White, he's amazing. He's in the UK. He does all the major Hollywood pictures. He did The Martian, Game of Thrones. He did Murder at the Orient Express. He's done like all the main, he did the documentary on Nick Cave. So he's done all this stuff. So he's going to be a regular on my podcast because we get along so well.
Yeah.
And and I'm just in talks right now with booking some other artists. I've got the person who did the cello and vocals for Cirque du Soleil, and just some really, I'm kind of like you. I'm interviewing interesting people.
That's awesome.
People with lives that are different from everybody else.
I want you to ask him, though, how difficult it was on Game of Thrones to do gaffing on Game of Thrones when you're doing a lot of outdoor stuff. I mean, I know they got generators and stuff, but to set all that up, I can just imagine how insane it was.
The hardest I think he's worked environment-wise was Crazy Rich Asians in Malaysia.
Really?
I think, was it Malaysia? Singapore, right? So Singapore's in Malaysia? I forget. Anyway, in Singapore. So It was hot and humid. It was just incredibly hot. Yeah. It's a tough job. It's a really tough job.
It is. I mean, just the whole film industry in general, whether doing TV or film, just being a part of the crew, it's a tough job. Yeah. I used to do commercial work, and you get up when you got to get up. You work till you got to work.
Yeah.
But it is a lot of fun, though, and I really do miss it because it's a blast.
What did you do?
So it's kind of weird. So for about 9 years, I worked with my father's company. I was an editor. I did a little bit of video, but mostly editing. And I would do on-set audio and everything, and post. But I didn't really care too much about it. It's just something to do. I was more interested, I wanted to do actual live sound, but then I just kind of fell back on this. But then I got out of it after the bubble burst because we lost a lot of clients, in 2008. We had a lot of realtors and car dealerships and stuff like that, and it just went downhill. So took some time off. And then my buddy was like, hey, I know these guys, they got a production company. They're looking for an audio guy. And I'm like, well, that's the real deal. Like, I can't say that I'm that great because I worked with my dad. So, I'm not like a guy that's like got any real cred,
Yeah.
But I faked it and I did it, and they turned out to be the awesomest guys. I was doing I was the boom operator.
Okay.
I was on-set recordist. And I did Foley, which I loved.
Yes.
And then I did post-production, editing and mixing and everything. So that was fun. And that led to actually directing and writing as well, which I loved doing the whole thing. So that was in Maryland. But when I moved to Michigan, I wanted to continue that. But I knew that I didn't have enough under my belt to say I want to be a jack of all trades in the field.
Yeah.
I'd have to like settle on one thing. So I didn't really pursue it because I'm not happy doing just one thing, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, you're a lot like me. Yeah.
Yeah. I like to do it all and have my hand in a couple different things because I think I would just get bored just doing one thing, So I don't know.
Oh,
I'd love to get back into it. And I was just so perked up when you were talking about knowing people in the film industry and stuff like it's such a fun thing to do, It's grueling, yes, but awesome.
It is. I was directing music videos and stuff like that. And a music video is fine, but I wouldn't direct anything longer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Why not?
It's too long. It's too grueling. It's too, Julian, we talked about that. I had him on the live stream actually before I had him on the podcast. And we were talking about the long hours, the 16-hour days and stuff. And one thing that was funny is that he's like, yeah, but I just did a George Clooney directed movie where George was the director. And he was like, George said that we could go home at like 5 p.m. every day. And he was like, it was so nice because that's the truth. Like you're gone for like 3-4 months working on a feature. And it's not my vibe.
Yeah. I think as you get older too, it's one of those things like, especially when you have a committed relationship or, have kids and stuff like that, you don't want to be doing those kind of hours and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that I always wanted to be in film, but as I got older, that was one of the things like, do I really want to do all that kind of stuff? And then work your way up through the ranks, like, when I was doing, when I wanted to do like studio work originally, like I went to school for audio engineering, and basically you had to be the bitch, like in the studio, you had to like get people coffee and clean and do all this stuff until they deemed you were ready to step up. And you were probably paid nothing or anything, like under the guys that were going to teach you. And for my age, early 20s at the time, I was like, I just can't do that. I got to get into working and making money, not doing it for free for the experience to maybe say, I don't know. We got this other guy. He's a good friend of mine and he's going to get a position here or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
That sounds like overthinking, but it's a risk that you have to take or whatever.
Yeah, you end up as a PA for too long, and it's a pain in the butt.
Yes. But hey, if you can move up and that's your dream, I mean, go for it.
Exactly.
Not dissuading anybody.
No, of course not. Of course not.
Yes.
No. It's for a certain personality type. That's all.
It is. It really is. But it is. I got to tell you, and it's for the amount of complaining when it gets hard. It is a lot of fun and you meet a lot of great people. And when you do something creative, and especially you coming from an arts background and stuff, I think that's what makes everything worthwhile. There's no high.
There's no high like the performance high. Whether you're doing theater on stage or you're an actress or you're a director, even a producer to a certain extent. I've produced as well. There's a high and you can't get that any other way.
You can't. Let me ask you this. How was producing? Were you knocking on doors for money or were you more like, what kind of producing were you doing?
I did small budgets, small, short films, produced my own music videos because the thing that you learn when you're venturing into filmmaking is that whoever has the money has the creative control. And so I worked on a lot of projects where I didn't have the creative control. And I figured, you know what, the next one I'm doing, I did 3 projects where I self-produced, meaning I forked up the money, took all the risks, but I had all the creative control.
Nice.
So yeah, you don't have to knock on doors necessarily. You knock on doors for things like catering. You make arrangements. You get like, they were all union films, so it was like you have to make arrangements with the unions for all the talent and all that stuff. But you find ways to do exchange of services. There's lots of ways to get stuff
Grease
done.
The wheels.
Oh God, yeah. It's all negotiations, baby.
That's right. This is the fun of it. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. If this sounds like a good time, go for it all the way, because it is. I mean, people do like really love produce, and it's just like any other high, like you said, it's of getting it done, finding that way when there is no money, the people don't want to negotiate, all that kind of stuff, making it happen, getting that film made, and just securing it and doing it right.
And I'll admit to you that one of the things that I definitely want to do as I acquire more, if I were to acquire more wealth in the future kind of thing, I would definitely start a production company, because again, the creative control, when you have so many friends in the business that have all these amazing ideas, you want to fund them, right? You want to say, like, you go with your idea and do it. I think the biggest thing I regret based on the experiences I've had is that I wasn't assertive enough. It's tough being assertive and saying, no, you can't spend $2,000 on a vase for the set. Like, there's certain things that you want to kind of reel them back. It's a tough job.
It really is. What's a really good book is Robert Rodriguez wrote a book called Rebel Without a Crew. And that
yes.
Did you read that?
With it. Yeah.
It was just so cool reading that as a young man in my 20s. That really inspired me, because when he shot El Mariachi, I mean, what he did to shoot that movie is he went to one of those inpatient studies. So he did some kind of medical trial and got paid for it. So that was part of the budget. The rest were just his friends and people he knew. The guns were all like pretty bad looking guns if you looked at them really. The sets were all like people's houses or places that he could secure just by knowing people. He went in, he did all the editing, all the music and stuff. Like, I think he snuck into the editing lab at night when everybody else was away just to do it, and made it for a super low budget. And then it just killed it. And then because of that experience of being so to the penny on the budget, every movie that he does, he comes in at budget or under, because he's so used to creating with what exactly he needs to get it done without too much fluff, which I thought was
and
really
that
neat.
still happens on big productions like Game of Thrones. You wouldn't believe the amount of hacks that went into Game of Thrones. And but again, it's those creative people who did really good student films, or who played with their cameras or their sound equipment when they didn't have to in their spare time to try new things. Those are the people you want as part of your crew, because those are the people that they're going to find savings, but not just to find savings, just because it's the best way to do it.
Yeah, it really is. I think, it's pretty much now, and I think every generation kind of says how much easier it gets. But I think now we're at a really good point where with your phone, you can create something that looks pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
Where back in the day, you had to have film, and then you get to DV, and DV is kind of sketchy and low light, like really sketchy. But then Danny Boyle makes 28 Days Later on DV, and it looks great, and proved to everybody that, hey, I can make a full-blown movie on this. Or, just the whole film versus digital debate. Like everybody said, you got your purists, and then you got your people that are just running and gunning on. Actually, Steven Soderbergh made a film on the iPhone, Unsane, and it was actually really cool, like done really well. Like at first you kind of see it, but then you're just lost in the film. and you don't even know you're watching an iPhone. I think it was iPhone 6 or iPhone 7
Cool.
movie. Yeah. So check
I
that
wasn't
out if you
aware.
get a chance. Yeah. He's a very creative guy. I love his stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, look, there's no reason anymore. There's no excuses anymore. Whether you want to shoot a film or you want to start a small business. I mean, the tools we have today, just 20 years ago, we didn't have access to. I mean, look at us. We're talking like in 2 different countries.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
Isn't that crazy?
It's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah. That's why life is so beautiful, right? It's just all the things that we have access to. We really can't complain too much.
Not at all.
Yeah. Nope. Well, let's leave it at that. I want to thank you so much, Julie, for coming on. This has been a great experience. I had an awesome time talking with you. And I hope everybody listening to it goes out and gets a microscope and checks out the microcosm around them, because it's just so interesting. And I know I really want to get one too. I got a daughter that's 5 and she would go nuts for it.
Aww.
So I might just have to, like, when we're done, buy one. Yeah, this kind of cool stuff.
And you know what? If you guys do end up getting a microscope, don't be shy. You know, contact me, send me a message, or go on Twitter and ask people, you know, what am I looking at? It's been fun. And Rick, you're a very personable host, so it's been a real pleasure being on your show.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. So
thank you.
Thank you. I can't wait to hear your show as well. So
thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks again, Julie.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening today. If you want more Can't Recommend Enough, you can check us out at Twitter at Always Recommend, or on Instagram or Facebook at Can't Recommend Enough. Please feel free, follow us there, like stuff, go there for more recommendations, more cool stuff. Always be posting stuff and recommending all types of things. So check it out, follow. And if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and like the videos if you're listening to it on there. Also, subscribe to the podcast on the player that you're listening to, and that way you can get updated whenever a new show comes out. But you also, in the social media, get updates when new episodes drop as well. So check it out. Thank you so much. Truly appreciate it. Have a great day.